Hi everybody, I'm Gavin and this is the British Bookworm. So today I'm reviewing a book with a difference because normally I am a hardcore bookworm for books that I can touch and feel. And when I feel like going digital with books, it's never really appealed to me. But I've decided, as I'm doing a lot of driving for a job, my current job that I have is a very big driving job, and so I've set myself a desire or a goal to use that time to educate myself, continue educating myself even further. And to do that, I'm going to be using a lot of audiobooks from Audible. And so the book that I want to review today feels extremely strange doing this. It's taken me 2 to 3 weeks because I've had to keep going back chapters because for some reason audiobooks doesn't really work for me. And I've got to say, it's never ever really worked for me. I've tried it many times. I have numerous books on Audible, and I just struggle. I need to read. I feel like it's more of a interactive experience. However, I finally got through the book that I'm reviewing today, yesterday, and now I'm on another one. So I'm going to just put a bit of a twist to my book reviews, and I'm going to review this from an Audible book point of view. So the book I am reviewing today is called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. And it's an incredibly nice book, well written, and the Audible side of it really comes across really nice. It's a really flowing story of a man whose wife became a Christian. He was an atheist. He didn't like the fact that his wife had become a Christian and that he was going to freak out, that she was going to become prudish, clean, over clean, overzealous, boring, miserable, things that she can't live and do. And so he tried to challenge it, and he saw big changes in her becoming a Christian, because that's how it works. People who become Christian change gradually over time to become better human beings, and because of the impact that the stories of morality that Christ had within his ministry of 2.5 to 3 years. So then basically what he did is he went and looked at this as an investigative journalist reporter who had I would say dedicated much of that reporting to the criminal world or criminal investigations. He wanted to investigate, and I think disprove rather, the evidence. So we're looking at it like from a point of view of evidence. So the book is actually kind of like an after the fact thing that he says he never intended to write, but it became an incredibly bestseller, a massive impactful book. I personally am going to rate this book a 5 out of 5, even though it's an Audible book that I've got. I'm going to probably buy the hard copy of it. I think it's a beautifully written book, and it basically, he interviews 13 scholars, 13 Christian Bible scholars, 13 experts who have spent their lives with massive pedigree backgrounds of scholarship, PhDs, degrees, masters in biblical scripture and New Testament and different languages, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew, etc, etc. And so he asks them key questions. Now when the time of writing the book, he's writing the book from a narrative, as he was instructed to, or suggested to write, from a narrative of when he was asking questions. So he asked the questions to these 13 experts about the questions that he had and he held as an atheist, to where the evidence is that Christ lived. Where's the evidence that Christ was the Son of God, that he was resurrected, that he was in the tomb, that where is all the evidence? And then represent the evidence to you as a member of the jury, as a journalist who's investigated a lot of crime. He's come at that. And the last chapter was a really profoundly nice additional adage to the book, because the person interviewing him questioned, who's also a scholar, from the same church, basically asks the question, some hard questions, and those are the questions that other people have kind of accused him or asked him of, and he answers them very succinctly and nicely. So the last chapter's saved to be a bit of a devil's advocate. For example, he's been accused of being a closet Christian before he wrote the book. Well, the idea of the book was to imitate the questions that he was having and acted upon and answered, had answered when he was an atheist. So the book is a kind of a replay of his experience in life when he was an atheist. Now, what comes across with anything to do with Christianity? This book is going to get a 5 out of 5 from the British Bookworm, and I'm going to say to you, if you are interested in learning, if you're an atheist, if you are a Christian already, if you know, whatever your background, I would recommend this book to you, because if you are wishing to learn that there may be more to this Christianity thing than you may think. And it's incredible how ignorant, naive, foolishly opinionated a lot of people have to the Christian message. And this book does cover a lot, as much as he can, as he says in the Audible book. He's trying to cover as much as he had as an atheist, the questions that he asked these scholars, where he went head to head with these scholars with these questions, and they answered their questions and their opinions to the evidence that Jesus is real, that Jesus was real and still is alive and breathing in spirit in heaven now. Now, what we have today is a time where the time that we are in now, we are distanced by the fact that the mainstream media, the main stories and narratives of society, doesn't fit into anything to do with the Christian message, unless you already are a Christian and you seek it online and you seek to learn more about your faith and to know more about other faiths and religions. Unless you are a seeker and a searcher yourself, then sadly you will be very ignorant to Christianity and other religions, but you'll be very, very opinionated possibly to what Christianity is. And it's not necessarily your fault, because what happens is, as a society, we have massive external influences that shape subconscious messages about basically taking the piss out of Christianity, taking the piss out of Jesus, taking the piss out of Mary, taking the piss out of factors to do with being Christian, or to be what is part of Christian, from the overzealous angles of paedophile priests in the Catholic Church to churches that are basically satanic and not Christian, entirely not Christian, where they what they call it prophet preachers. And you don't have the true Christianity. Very rarely do you see the true Christian reality anywhere in contemporary society or social media platforms where the masses can see that there's a powerful message to be had. So while Lee Strobel's book has been so successful, in my opinion, he has basically conveyed so much within this little book. I think there's like 16 chapters or something like that. He's basically, the Audible books are a really nice book to listen to, because it gets across with his voice. He has a very, very exceptional way of presenting. He's wrote different books as well, and he's got a very, very, very good way of presenting his arguments and presenting the evidence. Now, the point of this is, you can't prove 100%, as he says, this entirely, right? But you've got to listen to the argument, you've got to listen to the evidence and the cases and the examples to understand that even as a Christian, if you listen to the Audible or read the book, you can be shocked at how much you can learn about your own faith and how much there is to support Christianity, to support the fact that evidence in history is overwhelmingly on the Christian side, more than any other religion. And in fact, most the other religions, unfortunately, to other religions, cannot even come close to the evidence of Christianity. And that's quite a statement, but it's actually very, very true. The evidence, the archaeological and historical and scholarly evidence to and scripture and texts, like parchments that we have, like the Dead Sea Scrolls and other findings in the desert, overwhelmingly prove that the Bible, the New Testament, is a factual book. And people really struggle with that because they get hung up on that. You think, if you're one of these people, that you are the person having this critical evaluation to it. So one guy said to me at work, "What, so you believe that he walked on water?" That's the kind of mindset that's preconditioned or conditioned by society to ask those kind of questions, not look into the deeper question, which is what I'll answer the question. That's not the question to ask. The question to ask was Jesus a historical figure in the past? If he was, then who was he? And all the other ramifications that come away from that. If Jesus was a real person, then who was he? What did the disciples and apostles believe who he was? What was the evidence? How did a church become 10,000 strong within 5 weeks? I think the book, one of the scholars says. I'm not quite sure how they've come to that, but how did the church grow? How do we have the evidence that the scripture, the New Testament, is close to Jesus' actual life when it was written down as you can possibly have? And there's a lot of arguments that are foolish, that are stupid, that are arrogant, that come that are asked from a very ignorant point of view by Muslims, by other religions, and it really shocks me that if you look into the evidence, and I'm saying this to you as someone who has studied this again, it's another thing that I've spent my life researching, and more than so, the last 7 or 8 years have really started to delve into what it is to see Christianity as potentially a real reality to the answers and solutions to and problems to our world, and to explanations on why the world is the way it is, why people are the way they are. So it really shocks me how ignorant people are to it, because they've not been given the light. There's no light shining upon the realities of what is actually quite incredible, which is the historical evidence to the Bible. And so Lee Strobel asks these scholars hard questions, and they answer them extremely well. And even the scholars that are a tiny fraction of scholars believe on a different type of Christ, what they call a natural Christ, who cannot do any miracles, and that God is just a natural process of events that don't happen with a divine intervention, or that Jesus didn't do miracles. And they came to a thesis that only 20% of the oral words within the New Testament that Jesus supposedly have said, that they say only 20% of that they think only 20% of that was actually what Jesus actually said. They believe Jesus lived and breathed and was a real person, but they think that they can dissect the New Testament and say that only 20% of what is supposedly what Jesus said is what they think. And it's so preposterous, this group of scholars that are a microscopic fraction to the thousands of New Testament and biblical scholars. But the mainstream media give massive voice to these scholars, and basically present a really cynical view of Christ. So if you are a person watching this and you're a book lover and you like Audible books too, and you wish to learn something more about Christianity, why would you want to do that? If you've never looked into it before, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to listen to this book when you could listen to like authors like David Goggins or other books that are life-changing or fictional stories? You see, that's where Christianity is going wrong, or where Christians go wrong. They don't get across that the messages within Scripture, the New Testament, the messages from the Messiah, basically describes why you would live your life in a more clean and wholesome way. There is nobody as badass as Jesus. There is nobody who is more heroic than Jesus. There is nobody who's profoundly wise or sage or loving as Jesus. And there is a massive misunderstanding by majority of people to the nature of Scripture, to the presentations of it, because a lot of Christians are foolish, and a lot of Christians don't teach it right. A lot of Christians want to focus on being saved from going to hell, or from being damned and not honouring and worshipping the Lord, the Messiah. But I strongly believe that people within the Christian preaching ministries that stand on the streets preaching it to the young generations aren't explaining it. Jesus Christ was about being a good person. Overall, Jesus, his entire message is about love, about loving other human beings equally to how much you love yourself, and to being a person of servant, to being a servant to the society, to being a servant to other human beings, to being a servant to your lover, to being a servant to your wife, to being a servant to your children, to being less than other people in your mind, and honouring other people in love. Jesus is all about these things, and we are unfortunately living in a world where Christianity's message is polluted, terribly so, by Christians themselves, who wish to look at the hardline aspects where they're coming in with the dagger, and they don't realise, as it says in the Bible, Jesus is the cornerstone that people will be destroyed by. If you come at this from a point of view with love, you need to portray the story of a message of Christ in a way that people can digest and understand. To why are you bringing this character from 2,000 years, this cartoon figure, this animation from a 2,000-year-old history? He wasn't even real, man. He didn't exist. There's no evidence. He's just a figment of your imagination. Like, what is it? Who is he? What was it about? And people in the Christian community do a disservice to Christ because they aren't conveying the profoundly beautiful message that is in the New Testament, that is in the scholarship, that is in the evidence, that is in the archaeology. It's in the ground. For F's sake, it's in the ground. And I'm a Christian, and I'm swearing, because I am an impure person, as it clearly states in the Bible. The Bible explains our sin. It explains how we're all imperfect, and that is, we can't judge other people because of our own imperfections. There's so much to be taken from the Bible, and Lee Strobel's book presents a massive amount of intellectual evidence to support the Scripture, to support Jesus, to support the Messiah, to support what he represented, what he did, and why he came to save us. And I would say, well, I've just presented a little bit about what I think, but I'd say that this book and books like this are cool. They're funky. The books that have brought a lot of people back to Christ. He talks in the end about people who are pure atheists. One guy sat on this book by accident in a bookshop and picked it up and put it back, and then he decided that he should pick it up because something in him said, take it home. and he bought this book, went home and became a Christian. This book is exceptional, and if you read this book, I can guarantee you this: no matter how hardcore against Christianity you are, if you listen to The Case for Christ, you will come to understand, no matter how hardline you are, unless you're an idiot who doesn't adapt and change to a new reality based on evidence, that the story behind the Bible, the New Testament and Scripture, behind the factual basis of this person that walked the earth, was not just a man, but that he was basically the Son of God. That if you just digest the facts, then you're left with only one thing. And so when you ask the question, who was Christ? You need to be very careful how you answer that. And that's to all my Muslim friends as well. Because if you basically answer that question wrong, then God forbid. Because the evidence is there if you wish to see it. Now, I know that I'm preaching a little bit, and I certainly didn't intend to do that in this video. But what I'm trying to get across is that the book presents things which you will be unaware of, because unless you seek out the scholarly academic facts behind this historical relevance to the Gospels, then it's no wonder that the majority of people just laugh off Christianity. People who say they're Christian aren't real Christians. And it's difficult because you're getting told, listen, there is another truth to life that explains the current state of human beings, what's going on in the world leadership, and on a deep level, the spiritual battles in the world. So with that, I hope that this gives you some input, some interest in buying the Audible book, or buying his hard copy book or soft cover book of The Case for Christ. It's a fantastic book, and there's plenty of YouTube videos of Lee discussing different cases to Christianity, and some of them are pretty incredible, to be quite honest. Some of them are pretty incredible. I can't say much more than that without making this video too long. But all I can say is, as someone who has spent a lot of time looking into this, who follows the evidence and is willing to question everything, when you look into it, and I mean everything, I mean my own conscious reality, when you look into the evidence of Christianity, you have a very hard case as a member of the jury to throw it out. And that's all I'm going to say. If you like this video, give us a like and subscribe. Hopefully I haven't preached too much. Hopefully I've come across right. I'm certainly not pushing religion onto anybody, but I'm only reviewing this book as a Christian. But I'm saying to people, please, if you're not a Christian, if you're an atheist, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Buddhist, listen to the evidence, because we are all very ignorant on many levels, on many factors, and we must all be open to the levels of ignorance. But we can't hide behind all the sound bites of bits of education that we have and act like we know about things unless we delve into things. And in today's society, we unfortunately have so many people who are so cocky and arrogant about their own ideas about the nature of life and about the facts about different subjects, that they sit and argue and write stupid comments on YouTube to people, or Facebook or Twitter, and they argue to death things that they know nothing about. Now, that's pointless, because if you've done very little research on anything, how can you not know that what you've been told is not propaganda, for number one? How do you know that the Bible is just not a load of crap unless you research it? Where's the evidence? And that's what Lee Strobel did. He discovered that this, what he thought was nonsense, was ridiculous, became very far onto the other side of that equation, and he became a Christian. And not only that, he's dedicated his life to God, to Jesus, because he found the evidence, in his opinion, was overwhelming. So with that, my friends, I'm going to go. I hope you are enjoying the growth of my collection of books. I'm reading another life-changing book at the moment. I can't wait to review and carry on reading it. I'm working on another book in my driving job. I've got another book on the go, which I won't tell you what, but it's a absolutely incredible book. So with that, hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm going to now edit it and put it on. See you later, everybody.